Hi everyone. Um, I'm wondering if I should wait until I start seeing things happen. Um, Hi. Good. Thank you for the feedback. Um, yeah, we'll wait a couple minutes until some more people join. Um, so yeah. Doing well. How is everyone doing? Does anyone have any good jokes? Okay. We'll give it one more minute and then I will start talking about myself and give a little bit of a background on who I am, everything. Um, in the meantime, where are you all tuning in from? What cities are you in? Okay, we can go ahead and start. Hi, my name is Anika. I am currently a student at Stanford University. So I was born in the United States in a state called Oregon, and I now live in California, attending Stanford. My parents are from India, and they moved to the U.S. after they received their bachelor's degree, and so they now live in Portland, Oregon, and that's where I grew up. So I've definitely visited India and been to like Delhi and Bangalore and a lot of cities in India as well. So um, that I would love to know where you guys are from and how, yeah, like what your background is. But that's kind of about where I'm from. So what? So yeah, I'll be talking today about my career in engineering. And I study computer science right now at Stanford, and that, sorry, making sure, awesome. Um, so I do work for computer science, and that involves, yeah, so it's my third year of doing that at Stanford, and the track that I'm doing is computer and network security. So I will be continuing to study that after my fourth year into a fifth year for completing a master's degree. So this summer I've been working at Facebook, and I'm working on the infrastructure team. So that involves planning a lot of how the data centers are communicating with each other, and how the all of the information in Facebook gets transferred from one place to the other. So I can definitely talk more about my career at Facebook, but I also wanted to kind of give a background about how, like, what computer science looks like, and what different careers in engineering might look like. So when I was little, I was always interested in math and problem solving, and um, so I wanted to kind of have like some sort of career that involved, um, like taking an issue and figuring out how to solve that. And so, for example, if I when I was little, kind of was there was one instance where I was trying to go from door to door and collect food to be able to donate that, and I couldn't carry all of it in my hands. So I told this problem to my dad, and instead of kind of just going to 2 or 3 doors, collecting food, and then going home, dropping it off, I instead built a contraption, kind of built a big box sort of thing that would help me carry everything. So that was one example of how I had a problem, and then instead of just living with this problem, I created some sort of solution. And I think that mindset of you have some problem and you want to have a way to solve it, and instead of thinking too much about this problem, just thinking of ways that you can look at it and be like, how can I address this issue and how can I solve this issue? So I think that's what was really exciting for me, was problem solving. And so when I grew up, I wanted to do something with that, and I discovered computer science when I was maybe 14 or 15, and I took a class. I kind of taught myself some things online. So there are a lot of classes that exist that you can look at that are online, and that's kind of how I started learning about coding, and that was that was something that got me interested into computer science. And so computer science is a really cool way to just solve problems and have a way that you can kind of take something that might seem difficult and challenging and reduce it down to a way that you can basically a program that you can execute and make that solve something. So that's been that's been super cool. And to get there, I had to study really hard. I had to get good grades in school, and so I do want to talk a little bit about the entrance process in college. I know it's a little bit different for American universities versus universities in India, but I've talked to a little bit to people who entered some engineering colleges in India, and I know that the process is pretty heavily based off of an entrance exam. So if you do want a path or a career in engineering or in computer science specifically, then studying for that entrance exam is super important. And I think something that is overlooked a lot of times is that the studying for the exam, a lot of people might have tutors or specific people that they learn from, but this is all something you can learn on your own as well. So make sure that you find the right books. If you have access to a computer, then the best thing you can do is go online, go on the internet, and find classes that you can teach yourself, things about coding. You can learn anything in any engineering field. So when I talk about engineering, that involves not only computer science, but also civil engineering, like building bridges and buildings, electrical engineering, that's like working circuits and generating power, industrial engineering, which is working with machines, and chemical engineering. So that's kind of like researching different materials for different applications, and dealing with like textiles. And biomedical engineering is also a really interesting field because you're working on researching drugs for cancer patients or for other diseases or prosthetics. So there's obviously a whole range of engineering options that you have, and if you want to pursue any of those, the best path is just to find a way that you can attend college and get a degree, and that's really like easier said than done. Obviously, you need to prepare a lot for the exams and work really hard to get there, but it definitely by attending college, that opens up a ton of opportunities, and once you have those opportunities, doors will continue to open, and you will continue to have other options that are coming to you. So I'm reading the comments right now. Something about hacking. That's a good point. So I actually, like I said, am interested in security, and hacking is like a huge topic right now. I don't know how much you all have followed the news about like misinformation and all of these things, especially working at Facebook this summer. These are topics that are talked about a lot, and user data, like when you create a profile on some social network site, you obviously put data on there, and that can be like your birthday, information about who you're friends with. So this stuff is all really sensitive information because it can expose your identity. And so my experience at Facebook this summer, everyone's been really, really emphasizing how important it is that user data is kept private, and that other people do not get access to it. And so security is a huge, very, very important, and preventing things like hacking is very important. So I think it's a field that I'm really interested in because it involves people who are hacking have very creative minds, and so I think it's very interesting to be creative enough where you understand who is hacking you, and if you are able to understand that, and if you're able to defend against that, then that's a really unique skill to have, and something that I'm interested in. So I guess that's something about hacking. Can arts students apply to this job? So I'm not sure exactly what I mean by arts students. But yeah, I think like in terms of engineering, it seems like in India, the schools that you go to for engineering are specific to engineering. And so you go and, you choose to go to that college and attend that university. And so your focus would be on engineering. And so to get, a tech job or a job in computer science, the best way is to have a degree. And so having a degree from an engineering college is really important. Or just more useful. I think there's ways you could get around that, but it's definitely really useful to have a degree. Okay, so I talked about attending colleges and the the entrance exam briefly. Again, I don't know a ton about the entrance exam process, but yeah, that is definitely a really important in being able to enter college. And I know there's not a ton of there's potential for waiving fees if you are under a certain income level. So I also can't speak too much to exactly what the numbers are, but that's something to look into if cost is like the only thing keeping you back from going to college. Um, Definitely try and look at how you might be able to be supported in the process of applying or attending college. And so I talked a lot about college. Beyond that, I definitely, so to get into a job in computer science, you um, there's a pretty standard interviewing process, and so it's hard at these big companies because they are interviewing so many people and seeing so many people who so it's a pretty standard process that does not always seem completely fair because it's based off of 3 or 4 interviews where you um, someone gives you a problem, a coding problem, and you kind of talk out your solution and you type out your solution to it. So like you have to be good about describing kind of how you are approaching the problem, describing like how you came to the specific solution. And honestly, that was something I was pretty bad at to begin with. And I think um, I think even if you are really good at computer science, there's a possibility that you just aren't that good at interviews, and that makes it hard to enter the space. And so my recommendation for that would be to um, get an interviewing book. They have several books out there that kind of tell you exactly the types of problems that an interviewer would ask you, and and it provides the solutions as well. But you can read a question and then on a piece of paper just write out like what you would do, and then um, and go through that process and practice with other people, practice you know um, talking out loud, and just making sure that you have the ability to explain what your thought process is and provide the solution in in a way that makes sense to the other person. And I think that's a specific skill that is like not. I think it doesn't correlate exactly to how good of a coder you are or how good you are at computer science, but is kind of a separate skill that is really beneficial to have if you want to work at a big company, because they do have this process of interviewing, and it's not always does not always feel the most fair, but if you're able to master that process, then it makes it easier to get a job at one of these companies. Um, Let me read. Um, okay, something about computer science that's hard. So, in general, like the I find my job really interesting. Um, when I said earlier that I like solving problems, I think that's something that keeps me really engaged with with the work, because it's consistently something that I enjoy finding. You have a problem, and I enjoy finding a way to solve it using my skills. I think it's basically the challenging part of it is finding access to resources that can help you solve the problem you have. So what's really important to have is good communication skills. So I know like studying English is something that is really important. Basically, everyone in the tech industry will be speaking English, and it's very important to be able to communicate with other people because there's so much collaboration that happens in the field, and um, there's no company that in which people are only working on their project by themselves. At every company, um, you are talking with other people and you are communicating with other people to collaboratively solve a problem. So making sure that you are able to do that with other people and like work together. So I think that's something that as you know as like before college you can work on by studying with your friends, finding problems to solve with your friends, and um, making sure that you learn how to work with other people. So that's yeah, that so I think that's really important. Um, I got a question about programming languages. So yeah, I think so my favorite language is Python because I can um, so like I said, I really enjoy kind of the the idea of using logic to solve problems. And with Python, it's like basically like English, so it's pretty easy to use, and you don't have to worry too much about the syntax or like where I put this parenthesis or these like kind of minute details. And so that's really interesting. But I think knowing C and C++ are very, very useful because it gives you a much better understanding of how the computer works. And um, learning a language that is very low level, meaning if you're on a scale where here is the computer talking in ones and zeros and binary, and then here is Python coding where it's basically like speaking to a human. There's a whole range of things, and I think learning things over here where it's a lot more trying to think on the level of a computer. I think that's really interesting because it gives you a much better concept how of how the computer works. And I think having that understanding is really important because then you can understand the limits of what a computer can and can't do, and that essentially makes you a better programmer to have that background. So I would recommend learning, maybe start learning in something like Java or C++. That's kind of somewhere in the middle of that scale that I talked about. Um, but if you have the chance to learn something like C or even assembly code language, like I think that makes you a more well-rounded computer scientist, I would say. So, how much? So there are um, okay. So I also wanted to talk about um, yeah, how I kind of keep myself motivated and what kind of drives me every day. So I think what I really try to focus on is finding is finding problems that are exciting for me and staying engaged with those by doing a lot of reading on what is going on in the space. Yeah, reading articles, reading posts, and then trying to just contribute how I can to the problem. So one thing that I've gotten interested in recently, like I mentioned, security, and I've been really interested in blockchain, and that's like a very new space that is kind of, there's like a lot of news about it right now. If you guys know about like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, these are all kind of buzzwords right now, but there's also a lot of really interesting technology behind it. And so, taking time to like read about them and like just be able to find things that are continually interesting to me, that's really helpful in the long run, because that makes me motivated to continue doing the work that I like, and that also gives me kind of something to work towards of, there's this thing out there that I want to be able to contribute to. And so, yeah. And is there any difference between computer and software engineering? So I would say, so computer science and software engineering, I feel pretty synonymous to me. Computer science maybe encompasses a larger, kind of a larger topic, which involves like, like working on software and kind of computer engineering. And yeah, so I feel like computer science is kind of a broader term, but they're both pretty similar. And yeah, I think like there's a comment about completing, courses and still like not being able to find a job. So I think this goes back to what I was saying about you can have a lot of skills and like be really good at what you do, but it might be hard for companies to recognize that because they don't. I guess they have a specific interviewing process, and they don't. They might not see that you're really qualified, and so I think there's another level of of distinguishing yourself by um, being really able to communicate during interviews, and having a resume that kind of lists like lists your interest and and your background. And so I think focusing on things like that, while it's not as fun obviously as being like doing computer science and working on things that are interesting, I think investing the time into creating a resume and practicing for interviews pays off in the long run, because once you get a job, then you can kind of there are a lot more opportunities and doors that are opened for you. And let's see. Yeah, so and kind of I can talk more about maybe my experience this summer at Facebook. Um, so I think in the US, we kind of view there being like a couple different trajectories for someone who's interested in computer science. So one of those would be to like work at a big company, and that would be like Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple. These companies have like pretty structured programs like for internships, and have like they have like they have a very streamlined process of having people enter the company, and they have a lot of benefits that they treat their employees really well. Um, so, for example, this summer at Facebook, they've provided housing for me and transportation, and I get food at work as well. So it really provides a lot, and they have strong programs. So it's been a really cool experience, and then so that's kind of like one of um, the types of things you can do. I guess the first and the second one are kind of just two ends of spectrum. So there's like the big companies, and then there are also startups, which for me, being in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of those around here. And so like working at, a company with 4 to 5 people, um, that's definitely a different experience than working at Facebook, which has tens of thousands of employees. And I think that experience I had last summer, and that was also really interesting. I think for a startup, I think a big company is good to start off and getting a really good financial basis. And I would definitely recommend if you're interested in computer science to look at the large companies that you could potentially apply to and see that. Yeah, I think working at a startup is like a really interesting experience, and you can learn a lot. And uh, yeah, so that's also something that a lot of people pursue. And there's also kind of a more research type of route that you can take. So um, if if you do end up pursuing an undergrad degree and decide that instead of working in the industry for computer science, you are more interested in investigating and researching topics more in depth, then there's opportunities to apply to grad school, and that would I know there's a lot of people who attend Stanford who did their undergrads in India, and they came to Stanford for graduate school and are, pursuing a PhD now. They are studying computer science and have, are really interested in investigating one topic more in depth. And so, yeah, it's good to know, I guess, for you all that working or being a computer scientist does not necessarily involve just working at Google or at a big tech company. You can also like be doing research, and like if you're interested in one topic, understanding everything about that topic, and being able to focus several years of your life, just pursuing that one topic. So that's another choice. And um, I'm working. Okay. So there said something about there's a question about, is it better for girls? So I'm not sure I have the full context to this question, but I can speak about women in computer science. So this was maybe actually one of the reasons I initially felt like I should pursue computer science even more, because everyone said there are so many opportunities for women because companies are trying to um, promote a culture where women feel more welcome. And so I never was, scared to enter engineering because I was a girl. Um, but I'm glad that I had encouragement to do so. And so I think I don't think the process of interviewing or like anything along those lines is easier for girls. Um, and I think there's like a lot of there's a lot of topics that are discussed in the industry dealing with having more equality around gender. So I would say, like, if you're a girl, and definitely don't shy away from engineering, because there are so many opportunities out there for both girls and boys. And um, so I would really, really hope that being a girl does not, take away from your interest to pursue engineering. And um, yeah, so um, by hacking, can anyone find out location? Yeah, I mean, it depends on. So there's a question about hacking and location. I'd love to talk to you about hacking, because there's been a lot of good questions about that, but maybe we can talk later. I think, yeah, I think there are a lot of really elaborate things that people, people like have come up with to try and attack systems like big companies. And so I think if one of you guys are really interested in hacking, um, there's things out there which can kind of give you some sort of exposure to what hacking is like in the real world. And they're called Capture the Flag. So CTF, Capture the Flag. It gives you, it's kind of like a exercise where you can go and, try to hack a computer, and it's all in a safe environment. You aren't actually, taking anything away from people. So that's, yeah, if you're interested in hacking, I would recommend trying something like that, or reading about it, since there's a lot of, really interesting things that people have done, and ways people have protected against attacks. I actually took a cryptography class last year, and I thought it was really, really interesting, because it was kind of all of like the mathematical mathematical kind of backing behind interesting algorithms that